Well, business processing outsourcing is rapidly growing. There's a lot of outsourcing happening both locally and internationally. So basically, this is where one organization uses another organization to help them process and task or render other services. A common practice is accounting and human resource, where we are having a lot of people outsourcing tax consultants instead of having someone to do that, which is expensive in the long run. You get to outsource these services from other companies. Yes.
We have about 20 companies in the BPO industry in Kenya,
Yes.
and the number is expected to grow. What is driving this growth?
Of course, there's the demand, but also it is cost effective. Generally, it's cheaper to have to outsource than to train someone in the office to do all those things. It's cheaper in the long run because of the scalability factor. It is also cheaper because of the flexibility that comes around outsourcing, and also there's enhanced security because most of the companies do not have the infrastructure that is required to host themselves on the cloud because of a lot of cyber security issues. Yes.
And when you talk about hosting a company on the cloud, what exactly are you talking about?
Like an example with Parallax, we're using Amazon Web. So it entails storing your data in a secure place where it helps the usability. Instead of having to buy, as a company, instead of having to buy the infrastructure to have our own physical server in the office, we have it stored online by another company. That is like Amazon Web, where they are hosting it for us. So with that comes what I was saying, there's the security aspect of it because they encrypt our data, they store it for us. So in the event that we move from one place to another, or in the event there is like power shortage, we do not lose our clients' data and our systematic way where our data is stored and easily accessed. So a lot of companies are also leveraging on that fact, that they need somewhere to store data, the increasing and overwhelming data that we are having to get each and every day now because of the digital footprint. Yes.
Of course, you're talking about it, cloud computing, which is also growing. But the challenge has always been, when you trust your information with a third party, and you obviously are not very sure what you're doing with that information. So how do you ensure the sanctity of data that you provide to third parties?
Well, we follow a lot of the regulatory acts, like the government one that is there for the data policy and private policy. So there's also the international standard that we are required to follow. So part of it is following those guidelines that are already set out for us. Number two, we're also collaborating with secure gateway platforms like M-Pesa, Visa, MasterCard that have invested in data privacy and invested in data security. So there's no breach from outside. Yes.
When you look at, the e-commerce industry here in Kenya, numbers are saying that this sector is going to grow, or we're going to get to about $1 billion, by the year 2027. What is driving this growth of e-commerce in Kenya?
Well, one, there is the accessibility and affordability of smartphones. For example, right now there's a very common thing called M-Copper, where you can get a phone from Safaricom or a distributor, and then you pay it slowly. So it makes it easier for so many people to own a smartphone. Even if it's expensive, they get to own it at a very comfortable price. So there's that, and there's also the connectivity. So you don't have to leave the comfort of your house to do shopping. You can basically order anything from your house online. I don't need to go to Mombasa to get probably a car or get something. Someone from Mombasa doesn't need to come to Nairobi to get a pair of shoes they've seen online. So it becomes easier. So I just order it online. The vendor from who I'm buying has mechanism where they send it to me at the comfort of my house. So there's that comfortability and how easy it is to do shopping online. Yes.
Also help us understand, I mean, how a youthful generation is driving e-commerce and BPO industry in Kenya. And I mean, when you relate this with what is currently happening, whether you have millions of young people who are unemployed, and how can we take advantage of the youth bulge in Kenya to drive the growth of e-commerce in Kenya and, of course, the BPO sector?
Oh, okay. So in e-commerce, there's something called platform as a service. So that's where we have the social media platforms. There's a lot of popularity on social media that has helped grow market and grow the sales. For example, a lot of people are selling their products and services on Facebook Market. A lot of people are doing it on Instagram. A lot of people are doing it on TikTok. There's also the aspect of using influencers, brand influencers, brand ambassadors. So that is also contributing to a lot of employment. It is also, people are encouraged to do things like, if I'm seeing someone selling their clothes online and earning money and generating revenue from it, it encourages me at home, while I'm at home, not to just wait to be employed. I can actually start something with my phone. Yes.
And also, you know, our geographical location. I mean, look at Kenya. We are just 2 hours behind the United Kingdom. We're 2 hours behind Germany and many other countries. And so how is our geographical location also playing or favoring Kenya as a BPO destination?
I'll start by saying with the connectivity and the literacy level, Kenya has been on the global scale with human resource labor. Like, we've seen a lot of human resource labor being exported to other countries. We've seen a lot of remote jobs happening, and Kenyans are performing at this work. So it is helping in the sense of, like, there's employment. It's helping also vendors from here to sell products to people in Europe, in other parts of the Africa. So yes. And
you know, when you look at the youthful population that we have, and when you look at the various programs that the government has rolled out to drive digitization and digitalization of government services, are we on the right track?
Definitely, yes, we are.
How?
There's a lot of jobs opportunities that have come up, like I've said, influencing gigs. There's a lot of business awareness, like a lot of businesses get recognized. They don't have to invest a lot in advertising. Like the old ways of advertising, now I just have to pay Google ads or pay Facebook ads. This encourages a lot of startups like us, Palax, to venture into the space, into the industry, and in the end we create more employment. Yes.
And when you look at Vision 2030, which is Kenya's long-term economic blueprint, I mean, it identifies the BPO industry as a catalyst for job creation as well as economic growth. Do we have the right policies in place to drive the growth of BPO in Kenya and e-commerce?
Well, yes and no. Yes, because the existing one have already facilitated the growth to where we are. No, because this is an industry, especially the tech industry, rapidly grows very fast. There are new things coming up, so new policies have to be made. So there's like a need for the government to catch up with how much the trend is going, which I feel like the government is not.
And
to some extent in terms of the policies. Yes.
And when you say the government is not playing the catch-up role perfectly, where is it failing?
Well, part of it is because of how it's rapidly growing, everybody is figuring out as things come out. So there's that aspect.
So they are learning on the job.
Yes, everybody is learning on the job, including the government. But now, government shortcoming is that they are not having very youthful and agile people who are very quick to adapting to this trend in those spaces to have these conversations. So that's what is making them lag behind. Yes.
So if this anomaly was to be corrected, how would it be approached?
Definitely more young people in the space to have this conversation, more young people from the tech industry, because those are the people that understand in first hand before the rest of us catch up. More acceptability. I feel we are a prop tech company, and I feel like most of the industries in Kenya have not moved to the digital platform. Like Parallax, we are trying to move the real estate to the digital world. So trying to make that transition on the industry to the tech side is also what is lacking. Yes.
What you're just seeing on your screen is one of Kenya's flagship projects under the ICT sector, and this is the Huduma Center. With more than 50 Huduma centers in the country spread out, where services, at a small fee, this has been termed as a revolution. And what do we need to do to have more centers of excellence in the ICT industries like the Huduma centers?
Adopt a lot of the new technologies like AI, machine learning to such innovative things. Because you see now with AI and machine learning, they get to understand the consumer's behavior, they get to predict. There's the algorithm, the AI learns what exactly I need, so it helps to tailor make advertisement. It also helps the producers, the manufacturers to tailor make goods and services to individualized customers. Yes.
Do you see strong adoption of AI or artificial intelligence in government services?
Not as strong as I would want.
Why?
Again, what I'm saying is catching up with the trend is what is our biggest challenge with our government. There's a lot that needs to move to we are halfway there, but they need to add some of these technological advancements like AI and machine learning to help us improve on that. Yes.
Like, which area of the economy do you feel the government should invest more on artificial intelligence?
That's an interesting question. Tourism would very much thrive because Kenya has very beautiful places to go. So with that, we don't really need much per se. We just need the photos, the videos, the what to help put Kenya out there more. So it becomes easier for the tourism industry to target tourists from various part of the world. Sorry. So I feel like tourism would really benefit with AI. Which other one? Without getting into much trouble, I feel it's also health and security. Those are and education. Those are very paramount, because as they adapt that, we also bring another generation of very technologically savvy. Yes.
And of course, of late we have seen the government, making a aggressive move towards computer coding. In a bid to mold the next generation of coding experts in Kenya. Do you recognize this as a great attempt in deepening Kenya's ICT industry?
Yes. Like I said, we are really heading in the right direction. There's a lot that is being done, even though we are still not yet there. There's a lot that is being done by the government and also the private sector. There's tremendous growth. There's a lot that is being done, but there's still a lot we need to do. Again, because these technological tools and advancement are coming up very fast. So all we are doing as of now is playing catch up as compared to other developed countries, where I feel where we would get to a point where we are doing so well is where we are also part of the people that are bringing up these things. Like, let's have, apart from M-Pesa, let's have an app that is as famous as Facebook and TikTok from Kenya or Africa. Yes.
And I like the fact that you're bringing in the issue of creating the next generation of innovative applications. And M-Pesa, has been a revolution in the mobile money business.
Yes.
Not only here in Africa, but around the world.
Yeah.
But M-Pesa is now how many years old? It's almost turning 20.
Yes.
This concept was started back in 2007?
4-5, I think 4-5 it became.
Yeah, but it was rolled out commercially in 2007.
Yes.
We are now in 2014. We are yet to develop another explosive application like M-Pesa. What is happening with our innovative skills?
Partly, like we have discussed earlier, I feel like if we have this technological side introduced in our curriculum, where we do not have to wait to get to campus or university to do computer or software engineering for us to start making this innovation. If we can start as early as maybe primary and secondary school, where we're having IT being taught as a course, I think it will be easier for the younger generation to come up with such great innovations instead of waiting until you're in campus and then you're waiting. You still have to do other things with life and still have to make a very creative innovation. I feel like part of it has to come from us training the younger generation. Yes.
And you see, as a country, we have various platforms where innovations and the next lot of scientists can be established. And I'm talking about platforms like the Kenya Innovation Week, which happens annually. I'm talking about the Kenya Young Scientist Week, where, young scientists or upcoming scientists, congregate to look at the next innovations and the innovation ecosystem in Kenya. So why aren't we having great minds, coming out of these platforms, to develop concepts that can help Kenya in its socio-economic agenda?
Well, that one has a very deeper root to it, because apart from the government playing its role, we as individuals and as parents also have a role to encourage the younger generation, to help expose them more to greater things. Like, instead of passing time and using social media as an entertainment platform alone, we can use it as an educational platform. Let's get to YouTube and see how our young kids or people in America or in China, what are they doing? So we start by encouraging the younger generations at home, at school, and then now the government provides such opportunities and environment. Instead of having it once or twice a year, why can't we have it every month? Why can't we have it? I remember back when we were in high school, we used to have science congress. Why can't we have those things back in university and in secondary? Let us see kids doing that more, so that back at home they're encouraged, at school they're encouraged, and as a is also encouraging a lot of that technological advancement. Yes.
Well, if you're just joining us, we're having a conversation with Maureen Kimani. She's she works with Palax, and she's she is a BPO as well as e-commerce expert, joining us here to give us an overview of where the sector is, what we need to do the hits and the misses, and how they can be addressed. You're watching us live from Broadcasting House. And of course, remember, Kenya Broadcasting Corporation is the official broadcaster of the 2024 Paris Olympics, which are happening in the city of Paris in France. We are taking a short break, and thereafter, we are back with more stories.
Freedom is coming tomorrow. I want the whole world to know that I am mine and you are yours. Sorry. You are mine and I am yours.
How long have you been in this college?
Very long.
Very long, I know. Beats me why you are happy to see someone else taking what is rightfully yours.
Atito Jaturua, speak for yourself. Pesa ni sabuni ya roho. Inasafisha bien.
Hey, red days, and red days. I just beg of you to keep your feelings on check, or else I will disappoint all of you.
France welcomes the 2024 Olympic Games. In this edition, heroic Team Kenya is pushing boundaries as well.
An Olympic gold medal.
More significantly, Kenya is intent on claiming victory at the quadrennial sporting event comprising of 45 sports that will be staged from 24th of July through to the 11th of August. Here comes a dose for everyone.
Yes, it is!
For the athlete, it is chasing a dream of a lifetime. And for the fan, witness history in the making, live and exclusive on KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Well, Kenya is a big player when it comes to the business processing and outsourcing business, ranking at number 3 behind Egypt, South Africa, and then you have Kenya. But this sector is facing a myriad of challenges. One of them is lack of updated regulatory policies, and of course, the bulging population of young people without jobs. And so how do we tap these and ensure that we flip the coin to our advantage? Maureen Jerry is an expert in this area. She works for Palax, which is a startup that is basically working with big-time players in the BPO industry here in Kenya and around the world. She has been guiding us on how to improve this industry in the last 35 minutes. And now we have about 25 minutes before we wind up this conversation. Maureen, you see, when you look at Vision 2030, it anticipates that by the year 2030, we should be talking about 200,000 people employed in this industry. We have 6 years to go. What do we need to accelerate these? Because I understand there are about 110,000 people working in this sector.
We need to do a lot of civic education, number one. We need, which I can say the government has been doing that lately, talking about the online jobs, talking about positioning the country into those places. I'll give you an example of Philippines and India. They're part of the emerging BPO industry, leading countries on BPO. They have outsourced so many of their citizens to
India and Philippines, actually.
Yes, to work with most of the American and other developed countries. So I feel like the government has a big role to play on that, to help us leverage on that. But also the young people also have to be very much intentional on doing those jobs and connecting with these people, because now it's very easy with the help of social media. Yes.
Another challenge that has been highlighted in this industry is low remuneration among young people joining this industry. Because I understand the entry salary for a BPO executive, or what you'd call center executives, is between 20 to 25,000 shillings. Do you feel there is a need to review these, at company level?
Definitely there is need to review that, but you see a lot of companies, especially the private industry, rely on the regulation, the minimum wage bill that is passed, like the minimum wage that is required. So at the end of the day, it's a business. They also have to make sure the expenses are low, but to emphasize and raise the minimum wage for it to be easier to help both the employees and the employers. Also, labor unions also need to help lobby for their workers. Like we've also been seeing recently our doctors outside on strike. Yes.
Are employees in this sector allowed to join labor unions, bearing in mind that most of them, they work with contracts?
Are they allowed? Yes. I don't think there is any company that intentionally would bar their employees to not join. I don't know much about labor unions, but I don't think the private sector discourages their employees to join those unions. But there's also what you've said, their contract. I feel like we need more pensionable and permanent employees to have strong enough unions, because right now the strongest unions we have are mostly the government, the civil servant labor unions, like KUPPET, and for the doctors. We don't see a lot of private labor unions coming out to fight for their employees. Sorry. Yes. And
yet we have the Central Organization of Trade Union, COTU, which has been there for many years. I also want to have a feel of this. Why do most BPO companies prefer to employ people on 3 or 6 months contract?
I'll give an example on what is currently happening in Kenya and globally, the high inflation that is currently going on. So there's also the burden of high taxes. So number one, the business environment is not very conducive to guarantee job securities at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainties. If you look at most of the private sector companies in Kenya, they are not doing as well as they should have been. So it becomes easier to employ people permanently and pay for their pension and give them other benefits. Yes.
And when you talk about economic operating environment, and this has been a conversation that has been ongoing, for the last 10 years. I mean, I've done this for more than 10 years, and quite often I do hear people talk about tough operating environment. How can we improve the working environment, the business environment, the investment environment here in Kenya so that we can attract big ticket players into the BPO industry, into the e-commerce space in Kenya?
Right now, our biggest challenge as a country is the political instability. So
political instability.
Yes, that
has always been for many years.
Yes, but right now it's very hot. It's a very hot thing right now. So we are seeing a lot of, like, for example, the tourism industry is very much affected by that. Right now, the transport industry is very much affected, and the whole economic is being affected because there are a lot of people who have not come to work. Like on Tuesday, there are people who didn't come to work. There are people who didn't go to shop. There are people who didn't leave their houses, basically. So there's political stability. Number two, there's the biggest challenge that we've had as a country and as Africa, corruption. I feel like that is one of the things that is really lagging us behind, because you cannot have a place where I have to operate a business and I still have to remove money out of my pocket to bribe or give someone to either expedite the processes or pay someone to maybe get my tender paid. So there's corruption also that is playing a very big role in that. Yes.
And what about service delivery by the government? Is the government doing it the right way to create an environment where investors can come and invest? I know we've been talking about setting up a one-stop shop for investors whereby you can come. And Rwanda has been a perfect example of how they have managed to execute these, whereby they have set up various one-stop shop, even at major airports, where investors can just come, apply for their licenses, pay for the taxis, get the relevant document, and then within a week, their business is up and running. We're still trying to develop such a concept here in Kenya. What then do we need to do so that we can make the investing climate in Kenya favorable to investors?
We'll start with the obvious, corruption. I feel like we need to have strict measures where we are not only talking about corruption, but we are also having other sectors like the judiciary punishing and these people who are named as corrupt. Corruption is one. Number two, I feel like there's what we've said, we are not leveraging so much on technology. There's like a lot of technology that can help ease up most of those processes. A lot of government services are very manual. They're still very manual. Like there's a lagging time difference of adapting the digital platforms to help ease up the services. So like I don't have to go to Huduma Center, for example. Why can't we have somewhere where I can log in and have those services at the comfort of my house, instead of me having to leave the house to go to Huduma or City Hall to apply for a business license? Why can someone from Dubai or America open a business or do something without having to physically have someone be here or go to City Hall and all that? The government is doing a lot. I still say it's doing a lot because we have the e-citizen gateway.
But it's not doing enough.
But it's not doing enough. Yes.
I know you engage with so many investors from around the world who are keen on setting up their business here in Kenya. What is the number one challenge do they mention about doing business in Kenya?
Corruption.
Oh, God. Everything is corruption.
Unfortunately. The other day we saw what happened at Tatu City. Yes. The biggest problem is corruption.
What do you tell them? Do you tell them that we are as corrupt as you believe?
No. We tell them that it's just a few individuals. It's not the entirety of the whole country. It's not everyone in government that is corrupt, to be honest. It's just a very small fraction of those people. But the thing is, the negative things tend to be over-magnified. So, of course, we tell them that's not usually the case as always. So there's that I feel like that is one of the biggest problem. I feel like if we deal with corruption, every other thing would fall in place.
Have you lost big business because of the corruption tag with Kenya?
To be honest, no. Hopefully never. Because I think that, as we mostly deal with individuals, we deal with landlords, we deal with developers, we deal a lot with individuals. And I'm sorry to say, but a lot of the corrupt issues that come up are when you are doing business with the government. So with the private, it's not. I'm not saying it's not there. It's there, but it's very minimal. Maybe.
Are you trying to say that the public sector is more corrupt than the private sector in Kenya?
Unfortunately. Well, for the private, it's more scratch my back, I scratch yours. In the sense of like, I can get a developer or a landlord and they'll give me business in return for me to market their property. So it is a win-win situation. That's why there's the corruption is a bit lower in comparison to the public sector. Yes.
And what is the role of both the public and the private sector in addressing these corruption menace? Because, look, I mean, we've been talking about corruption for more than 40 years now, and we don't seem to be winning this war. We have established various institutions to deal with this crisis, and yet it is still becoming prevalent here in Kenya. What do we need to do? Because, let's face it, I mean, in the modern world, people are not, or companies are not willing to bribe people to set up their base in their country. There are so many options, okay? If investors do not get a better investment climate in Kenya, they have other options.
Yes.
They can go to Rwanda, they can go to Ethiopia, they can go to Tanzania, South Africa, and many other countries. And as you were saying earlier on, we have big-time players in the BPO world, led by India and the Philippines. And so we need to put our house in order. But the question is, how then do we do this?
We've already talked so much about how to go about it, but I feel like we also need to stop normalizing corruption. We need to stop making it something normal to bribe a police officer at the road. We need to make it stop being normal to bribe someone so that my procurement check can come out, or to bribe someone so that I can get a tender. We need to stop normalizing corruption, because the minute we stop normalizing it becomes something that we are disgusted by. So from there, it's easy to hold, like right now we can see how the public at large is really holding the government accountable on a lot of corruption cases. That is part of the reason why there is the ongoing demonstration. We need to get to such a point, individually and as a country and as companies, where we are just sick and tired of this corruption menace. Yes.
What factors do you believe will drive BPO and e-commerce in Kenya in the next 5 years?
Number one is adopting technology, like the use of AI, machine learning. There is a huge shift. There's a lot of people using technology. There is the social media usage of businesses to sell their properties and services. But I feel like we need to put more effort in using technology, because that is where things get easier. It simplifies things. It's easier for you to do sell something from Kenya to any part of the world. So adopting technology is really, yes.
And what is your message to to the young people who are watching this program and just wondering, how can I get into the BPO and e-commerce space? I want you to face them and talk to them. And that is your camera, number one.
I'd say the first step is knowing what you want, because BPO is very broad. There's so many industry inside BPO. So set a goal. What exactly do you want to do? Then be very intentional. Right now, things are very easy because we have social media. We have platforms like LinkedIn. We have platforms like Twitter, like Facebook, where you can see people who are already in the industry. You can message them. You can talk to them. You can ask them, how did you get here? What are the steps that I need to take? Can you be my mentor? A lot of it is going to be on our part to be very much intentional. I know we have the knowledge, I know we have the information on our phone, but the biggest step that we need to take is being more intentional on finding the right spaces for us, finding these right spaces, opportunities for us, because nobody is going to do it for us at the end of the day.
It must be a personal initiative.
Yes.
And of course, the government now setting up the ball rolling by creating the necessary policies and a good business environment.
Yes.
Any other thing we need to know from you, Maureen, before I let you go?
I think I've pretty much said a lot about Palax as a company and BPO and where we are as a country, as an industry. Yeah, so hopefully we'll have more conversations on that. I feel like we need to move to the how to, and not just what is happening, but the how to.
The how to.
Yes.
That is the elephant in the room.
Yes.
Very good. Maureen, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning and of course for sharing your insight with us.
Thank you.
Your time is highly appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Very good. Maureen Jerry is a business development manager at Palax Technologies, joining us here this morning to help us understand the state of BPO and e-commerce in Kenya and the bottlenecks therein and how we can address them. And according to her, corruption is our biggest challenge as a country. And this is the dragon that we need to slay. All of us. This will take the combined effort of the public as well as the private sector to deal with this challenge. You're watching Biz Check. We are coming up with the next hour, and the conversation revolves around the status of SMEs in this country and how we can drive innovation as well as investment in this critical industry in Kenya. Stay right here.
Are you looking for a brand-growing outdoor advertising with beautiful simplicity and an artistically inspired choice? Look no further. Our 40 years of credible reputation and experience will give you exceptional brand traction.
Mambo ya kujitibu, nilifika mwisho, sina kitu. Huyo dada lakini akakoma vile yeye. Chakula ni ya kufanya kuomba. Nikikosa basi kama jana.
TikTok. Get your brand on the talk with City Clock.
coming tomorrow. I want the whole world to know that I am mine and you are yours. Sorry. You are mine and I am yours.
How long?
Very long.
Very long, I know. Beats me why you are happy to see someone else taking what is rightfully yours.
Atito Jaturua, speak for yourself. Pesa ni sabuni ya roho. Inasafisha bien.
Hey, redness, and redness. I just beg of you to keep your feelings on check, or else I will disappoint all of you.
Hapa ni Pangani ambapo tumeingia bwaloni kusikiliza wamejiandaa namna gani.
Kukurukakara ni vigogo wa Kiswahili Pangani.
Wanawake wana uhuru wa kuvalia jinsi wapendavyo. Kwani iko nini?
Kama wanaume wanao uhuru wa kuvaa wanachotaka, basi wanawake pia wapewe uhuru wa kuvaa wanachotaka.
Dunia ya sasa hakuna mwanamke ambaye atapewa uhuru wa kuvalia anavyotaka kisha avalie nguo ya adabu. Wanawake watavalia nguo ambazo haziwasitiri uchi. Hivyo matokeo ni nini?
Bendera yetu Kenya.
Amidst the rising popularity of emerging digital tools such as artificial intelligence or AI, business leaders and consumers alike are increasingly keen to leverage new and emerging technologies in either making work easier or increasing revenues. This includes those that want hassle-free billing or invoicing and collection of water and power bills for their apartments, estates or commercial buildings.
When I talk about smart, it means we can be able to read all the contents remotely, send media servers. Once we've gotten that data, we can be able to consume it, generate reports, create scripts that we can now use to control the meters.
This is an example of a smart power meter. But how do they work and what are the differences as opposed to conventional meters?
In controlling the meters, we can either switch them on and off. So when I talk about controlling, that is what we do with the meters. They have a breaker inside. We send a command. The command switches it on or it switches off the meter. So basically how it works, a very much integrated platform, a software, where we get in all the tenants or all the customers. Let's assume this is a utility. We get all the customers within our system called Revenue Stadia. Once we've gotten the customers in and we've installed the meters on site, now we assign this particular meter to the customer.
We meet Colin Cyril, the head of networks and innovations from Revenue Stadia, a cloud platform that combines billing management and smart meter devices to produce a centralized billing. Collins notes that smart metering technology is uninterrupted and wireless, meaning that users are able to connect to their meters wherever they are. However, this technology still needs collaboration and enabling policy for it to scale.
Right now we only have Kenya Power and small other distributors, but for the small distributors they are limited towards their small regions. So we would like if the government could open up, get so many distributors in a region.
Companies like Revenue Stadia are leveraging on technology as demanded by consumers, converting day-to-day components to smart, usable devices. Alan Naoko, Tech One. Kenya's technological landscape is dominated by financial technology or Fintech, buoyed by a vibrant financial services sector due to widespread mobile money use. This is followed by agricultural technology or agri-tech, driven by growing value addition in the sector. However, health technology or healthtech is also making headways.
We want to make sure that in the shortest period of time, when a doctor comes and see you, goes and see you, you go in and see the doctor, they can be able to easily diagnose you and give you the best treatment that they can. Doctor, in order for them to be able to offer the best treatments, they need to make informed decision, well-informed decision. Informed decision can only come with the right type of data.
Victor Njogona, the co-founder of Jungo Farm, who is trying to change this narrative, says there is need for holistic mindset change.
I think most people view health issues as things that happen to other people, as opposed to things that could happen to them, and hence they pay no attention. And also the people who conduct the business forget that they are also one or another consumers.
One thing that both Jungo Farm and Afya Record have in common is web-based technology that is unique to their respective services.
In just a short period of time, a report, for example, a summary, that can tell them, oh, this patient is diabetic, has gone to the hospital 3 times over the last month, and they are allergic to this type of medication, will empower that doctor to give you the best care ever. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. We're trying to save lives using healthcare records.
Jungo Farm is a solution that we thought of that will be the bridge for the pharmaceutical supply chain, easing the processes of interaction between all the entities across the supply chain, from manufacturer to wholesaler to pharmacy to end consumer, but it's taking care of their specific needs, the specific needs of each entity.
The future of business is technology, but innovators also say that a critical mass of knowledgeable citizenry need to understand how they adopt this technology. Alan Naoko, Tech One.
Well, the first hour is down. Now time for the second hour in our conversation. We are looking at the future of SMEs in this country, and we're also focusing on the current status of this critical industry. If I can give you some very interesting data, the sector contributes almost 50% of Kenya's GDP, and when it comes to employment, we are looking at over 80%. And something else is 8 out of 10 businesses in Kenya are in the bracket of SMEs. So this is indeed a critical industry that needs to be given its due attention. And guess who is joining us as one of the SMEs in this country? We're talking to Dennis Liala. He's a business. The CEO of Western Elites Association, which is an organization that brings together SMEs from the western parts of this country. Thank you very much indeed, Dennis Liala, for your time.
Thank you, Brian.
First of all, help us understand, what would you say are some of the challenges facing SMEs in the country right now?
Okay, thank you. I've really given some exciting numbers there about the SMEs, and of course, when you look at the SMEs, for those who would understand, of course, these are small businesses with actually a turnover of less than 1 million Kenya shillings, of course, and of course, with employee size of 10 to 100 employees. So that is the employee size. And then, of course, you talked about the issue of the challenges that these SMEs are facing. Of course, we can say that the SMEs can't breathe at the moment because you look at from around 2020, we had the COVID aspect, which was really choking the SME space. And then now from there, we moved to actually elections again.
Mm-hmm.
You know that the elections normally derail or actually hamper, of course, the SME space in a way. And then, of course, from there now, we have seen the issue of floods. And just recently, I was here and we were talking about the impact of these floods on these SMEs. And then now, we are now on the aspect of the demonstrations,
Mm-hmm.
which are, of course, ongoing. And of course, with the Gen Zs, of course, having their own, the demands and all that. So that then means that you look at let's start with the current demonstrations. Number one, you realize that the SMEs space is facing the issue of lack of market access. So you realize that, for example, you have a farmer there, of course, harvesting tomatoes, and of course, number one, there is the challenge of the logistics, because there is no movement of lorries to take these tomatoes to the market because of the current situation, the demonstrations. Number two, so that means, of course, this farmer or the trader will not be able to access the market on Tuesday and Thursday, right? So that means then you are lacking the market. Number two, you're looking at now the issue of the destruction of property. You have seen the aspect whereby, of course, every time there is the demonstrations, you are seeing the people's kiosks, the mama mboga, as say, their property is being destroyed, the inventory is stolen and burned, and even actually we saw a report recently from, of course, from the business community, the Nairobi, which was saying that this county alone, Nairobi city, is losing 5 billion Kenya shillings every day.
Mm-hmm.
So because of the demonstrations, of course, that day when there is demonstrations. So you realize that those are some of the challenges. And now we also look at the issue of the banking, the financial services aspect. Of course, the SMEs have, of course, survives mostly with credit.
Mm-hmm.
And then now let's look at the current lending rate, which is standing at around 18%. Mm-hmm. So you realize, in business we have what we call the internal rate of return, which means that if I'm borrowing a loan at, for example, 18%, that means my rate of return should be around 20%, right? So that then I can make a margin there and, of course, pay back the interest plus, of course, the principal. So those are some of the challenges that this SME space is facing. And, of course, we are hoping that the situation is going, of course, to improve as time progresses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you.
And so what is the role of the private sector? Because we've really talked much about what the government needs to do, but what is the role of the private sector in safeguarding the future of SMEs in this country? Because, look, SMEs are the future big corporations of Kenya. And without big corporation, then you're not talking about any private sector at all.
Yeah. That's a good question, Brian. So the private sector, of course, has been doing, of course, a lot in terms of stepping up. Number one, we have seen them, of course, trying to look at the innovative ways. That means the technology aspect, right? So on the technology space, you see them trying to use the e-commerce, right? Whereby now someone, of course, can be able to buy commodities online, and of course they can able to deliver. So that's one of the private sector space. And of course, this private sector itself, we have seen the banking space also. The banking space has tried to do a lot in terms of ensuring that there is credit access to the SMEs, right? We have seen the issue of the digital financing, whereby now someone, of course, can access credit, of course, at the comfort of his seat, and of course can be able to do business. Of course, we have had that challenge of now whereby you see the interest rate still is very high, but I've seen the central bank or rather the CBK really trying hard to ensure that it solves that issue of the interest rates. And of course we have those that are of course predators, and that issue has been solved with time, and we're hoping that of course they are going to streamline and make changes so that of course the role of this digital financing is to ensure that actually there is inclusive financing, right? There is penetration of this credit to the interior, the local people can be able to access. So so that is it. We have also the aspect of these SMEs doing their best to actually formalize themselves, and the government of course has made the issue of registering a business very easy through the e-citizen. So you have seen that the SMEs, of course, we have those that are trying to ensure that now they become formal. You know, when you become formal, you can now take credit that we're talking about now from a bank. You can be able now to exist and of course operate as a body separate entity, right? Very independent. Yeah, so those are some of the efforts being done by the SME space to actually be able to actually navigate the current situation. Yeah, thank you.
And you've talked about one of the biggest factors, you know, facing the SMEs industry, and one of them is access to credit.
Yeah.
And you are quoting an interest rate of 18%,
yeah,
which is usually the number given by commercial lenders. Yes. Unfortunately, that is not the case because, you know, when you factor in other costs of that credit, it goes up to almost. And most SMEs, as we know, you know, their revenue stream is just one. And so getting a loan and paying it at an interest rate of 25% per annum, you know, it becomes a Herculean task. No wonder most SMEs, they do not celebrate their 5th birthday. Mm-hmm. What do we need to do really to ensure that we move from the conversation and now get down to the real issues, whereby we can have a situation where SMEs are getting credit at an interest rate of 7%, at 8%. What do we really need to do with this?
You know, Brian, the issue of the interest rates is actually dependent on the, most of the time, it's about the CBK, right? We normally have the CBR rate, right? Mm-hmm. So when the central bank rate, the CBR rate lowers, for example, during around 2017 to around 2022, we had a CBR of around 9%. It was normally maintained at that rate, right? So then when now, of course, from 2022, we have had this CBR climbing. It went up to around 13%. Mm-hmm. So now you realize that of course, and of course this CBR, the CBK is looking at so many aspects. It's looking at the level of inflation, right? Is again looking at the issue of when of course the monetary aspects that it has to do to ensure that then we have the monetary space stable. So of course there is number one that I've said, the CBR, which of course determines. So when now the CBR sets, for example, the rate at 12%, then now the bank themselves have now to add a margin to that 12%, then now they're able to now lend. So maybe the aspect number one would be the government itself trying to see that how can we then be able to improve rather lower the CBR. And then of course we have now those we have other players that can come in with cheap credit, right? We have the World Bank and all other agencies, of course, that now come in and say that we want to offer credit at a lower rate, and then now we see the SMEs can be able to access that. Mm-hmm. So that is the game of actually the interest rates. Yeah.
But Liala, I mean, you've been in this business for a while now, and do you know that almost every commercial bank in this country, yes, they have an SME-focused lending line. But when you look at the loans advanced to SMEs, they are of all loans advanced by commercial lenders. What is really not happening? Is it a question of PR by commercial lenders? Is it a fact that maybe most SMEs do not qualify for credit, or they do not know how to borrow? What is not happening?
Okay, so thank you, Brian, for that. The issue of the bank not, of course, extending credit at the, of course, the optimal or the required levels. Number one, I mentioned the issue of formalization of the SMEs, right? You know that no bank can access credit to you if you have not formalized yourself. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's normally a challenge, right? You need at least to have the KRA PIN. You need as a business, right? Or if it is, of course, a business name, you need that. And then now you need at least to have a certificate so that then the bank now can have a relationship with you. But then you realize that, we have around 7.4 million SMEs, right? Mm-hmm. Around that. That's according to the Kenya Bankers Association data. And then the KBS says that we only have 1.5 million SMEs that are now registered, formalized with of course, with the government. So then the banks are having a challenge accessing, actually being able to have a relationship with these SMEs. So number one is then to ensure that SMEs themselves are able to formalize themselves. They have the KRA PIN, and they have they are registered as a business name or all that. And of course, number two, we have the issue of banks also. They are normally, when a bank gives you a loan, they're actually normally looking at your ability to repay, right? Mm-hmm. So we see that, of course, we have the ability to repay. That's number one. Then number two, you will be looking at the issue of the collateral, right? So what do you have? Do you have a logbook, or you have a title deed? So when it comes to the issue of number one, the ability to repay, the banks want to look at what are the cash flows of these SMEs, right? If they are not stable, then of course they might not extend that. And then we have number two, you realize that most of the SMEs don't have collateral, right? Most of them. So then we have...
Collateral is a requirement.
Yes, yes.
Before you access any loan.
Yeah, it is.
So are we then setting them up for failure?
Okay. That is now when the issue of the digital financing comes in, mm-hmm, right? I talked about the issue of digital financing, but then we said it is actually in a predator mode, right? You're looking at these digital lenders lending at around 147% interest, mm-hmm, if you calculate. So they are not asking you for collateral. They are not looking at your cash flows, right? But that rate is very high. So then the thing here would be that the government, of course, is the one then to come in and say, how can we be able to cushion that? They are one, of course, to offer most of the time what we call to intervene and say that we can be able, these businesses, for example, these SMEs be formalized, and let's have an issue of, like, for example, they are being offered, these loans are being offered, for example, to groups. It is easier when we have had this issue of of course, the business clubs. Of course, it's not really chama, but table banking, right? Mm-hmm. Which has been working for some SMEs. So you realize that table banking, a bank at least, we are in a group of 10, right? So the bank knows that if it lends to us, to one of us, and of course we have one, the other person, of course, is able then to be able to act as a guarantor to the other person, then it's easier for this bank to trace. So I think one of the way, of course, I said, is the issue of the table banking, because we say most of them don't have collateral, and that is a fact. So the issue of the table banking, we have the issue of these digital lenders. If they are offering minus looking at the cash flows, of course, collateral, then how can we be able then to engage them so that then they can lower their of course, their interest rates to, of course, realistic levels. Yeah.
Well, if you're just joining us, we are having a very good conversation here with Dennis Liala. He's a business consultant as well as the chairperson of the Western Elite Association, which is a conglomerate of businesses from the western part of this country. We are looking at the future of SMEs and the challenges they are going through. He has talked about the ongoing national protest and how they are undermining the growth of SMEs in the country. Access to credit has always been a thorn in the flesh of SMEs in this country. You need collateral. Plus, the interest rate is always very high for most SMEs to access and repay. And then the other thing is, what is the government's interventionary role in all this? The government has been talking about the credit guarantee scheme. It was supposed to come into force in the year 2021. It never did. And now, we're still talking about setting up these critical infrastructure that is going to shield or ring fence SMEs in times of crisis when they borrow and they can't pay. And then the other thing, the government has also rolled out the Hustler Fund, where SMEs can borrow up to, I don't know how much, from as low as 500 shillings to as much as, your credit score allows you to. And the question is this: how many SMEs are getting this? The other thing is, the government has also been talking about setting up the SMEs Fund, where SMEs can borrow at a very, very low rate. We haven't seen these coming into the market. So what really do we need to do? Liala, when you look at those three interventions, the credit guarantee scheme, the Hustler Fund, and the much delayed SMEs Fund, what conclusions do you make when it comes to government seriousness in addressing access to credit for SMEs?
Okay, I would say that the government, of course, was fairly serious at the start. I realized that one of the government manifesto was the Hustler Fund that you have mentioned. And of course, they did work very well with the banks and rolled out the Hustler Fund. And of course, that I said is a tick. And we said that the challenge is actually the size of the loan being offered. So we say that averagely we are seeing...
Have you ever borrowed the Hustler Fund?
The Hustler Fund,
yes.
Maybe friends borrowing, and of course they tell me that mostly the rate is around 500 Kenya shillings. So, and you realize that with 500 Kenya shillings, you can't do anything with that. And of course, it takes very...
But of course, this is incremental, yeah?
Yeah, but it's a very low pace before you reach to a level like even 5,000, which, of course, a Mamamboga there at Muduru, of course, will need at least to buy stock, sell, and of course all that. So we have the fund itself, which I said is a good idea, but it's a matter of how can we be able to, of course, the government increasing the size of this loan.
Upscale the credit.
Important. Yeah, they have to upscale that because it's a good idea. You look at the interest rate, it's fairly good compared to other lenders, as you've said. We've been looking at that rate, which is actually very punitive to these SMEs. So that is, of course, we can say the government has tried. The issue of the credit guarantee
So we agree, number one, we agree that the Hustler Fund is a great concept.
Exactly.
But it needs to be upscaled.
Exactly.
Because I do agree with you. What kind of business can you grow with 500 shillings?
Absolutely none.
Okay? Yeah. We need to rethink and remodel the Hustler Fund so that, SMEs can access money to stock their business, to offset their credit, and of course to expand their business. What about the credit guarantee scheme?
Okay, of course, that one, of course, will say it has not materialized, but of course, maybe if the government, of course, we understand the government has been having some challenges. They have not stabilized. You understand the issue that is the matters at hand, but we just hope that once the issues, of course, the government again settles, dust settles, then the government will be able, of course, to work on that so that this comes, of course, materializes. Of course, that's what I would say. But it's still, again, a good idea whereby, of course, we just said that the main challenge here is about the issue of collateral, the security, which most SMEs, of course, don't have access to. They don't have, most of the people running the SMEs don't have land, right? You talk about the logbook, they don't have. So if the government can come in with that intervention, then it can be a great idea to actually solve, of course, fairly solve the challenges that we are facing. The other one you said about is the
SMEs fund.
Yeah, the SMEs fund. And of course, that one, we have not seen how it's going to work. Again, we have, of course, to look at look at how is it going to be rolled out. Yeah, and of course analyze it, and then we can speak more about it. But I say that the government is, of course, has tried, and we hope that the ASLA fund side is going actually to upscale on that, and things, of course, we can see some fruits from that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other thing that the government has been encouraging SMEs to do is to tap the market beyond Kenya.
Yes.
The African Free Trade Area Agreement came into force last year, where countries are now opening up their markets to other African markets without much restrictions. And the government has been very keen, telling local SMEs, please, don't just focus on the Kenyan market. Focus on the 1.2 billion people that Africa has to offer. Focus on the 54 countries that make up Africa. Are the SMEs listening to this, or are they ready to access this market?
Okay, that's a good question. When you look at the issue of the export market, and of course it's a good space, and the African free trade, of course, the area, the initiative, which of course came into effect last year, is still a good idea to ensure that then we have markets from the other African countries. Of course, there is easy access to this, of course, to these other countries. So the thing is that the export market is, of course, a bit intricate, and of course it requires, of course, what we've said about the government still intervention. The government, of course, has been trying. We have seen this issue of the free, what we call industrial parks.
The free economic zones.
Yeah, free economic zones. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So the free economic zones have been important in terms that when you are operating there, you have either actually not accessing, getting taxes. These levies are not as at the level other businesses are getting. You have, of course, other concessions that you are getting. Mm-hmm. So those ones, and of course, we have seen mostly dealing with the issue of the clothing space, whereby most of them have been venturing into that. But the issue of the export market, I'll say that if you look at that space, it's about the challenges that are there. Number one, we see that other markets are normally very restrictive, right? Protectionism. Mm-hmm. They are trying to normally to protect their commodities, and this has been a phenomenon globally, whereby you have seen even the US trying to really impose a lot of tariffs to other, of course, to commodities, like to other commodities from outside. So you realize that the export market, number one, we have these countries trying to protect their commodities from, of course, access. Even if they say that the market is open, but we have the tariffs. Number two, we have then the issue of the regulatory framework, right? They have very high standards for you, of course, to access that market. You realize that you look at the standards, if it's actually like fresh produce. We have been seeing scenarios whereby someone takes avocados to the airport with a lorry, full lorry. So you reach there and you get back, you're told that the avocados are not good to the
they don't meet
level.
the necessary standards.
Yeah, the level, that required standards. So you have to, either now it's upon you to see what you can do about that. Either they take a half of it, or of course all of it. You are told actually return with your commodities. So that is the standards aspect. It's a very critical space that, of course, needs to be looked at. And of course, that means that then they
But if you allow me, I mean, to interject at that point, I mean, each country in the world, and I would want to talk about fresh produce, they have a set of their phytosanitary standards that must be observed, lest you import diseases into your country. Yeah. You import pests into your country. And so you have so many SMEs joining this space without, first of all, understanding the phytosanitary requirements of the international export markets. And so then, because they need to get into business. Yeah. So whose responsibility is it then to ensure that they meet the required standards in order for them to get to the international market? Just the other day, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Kenya and the EU signed the EU Economic Partnership, which gives access to the European market, to the Kenyan goods. And so you have the ready market here. But for you to access that ready market, you need to meet a set of requirements. Sometimes they are very tough.
Very
so
tough.
What is the role of the government in ensuring that for SMEs who want to tap the international market, they are well capacitated in terms of knowledge and resources?
Yeah, you asked about whose role. Number one, it's about the SMEs themselves. You know, it starts with us, the SMEs. Nowadays, we have at least everyone, almost everyone has a smartphone, can access the internet. You can actually be able to download the requirements when it comes to AU market. You can be able to access and, of course, read what is required. Of course, you try to gain skills, knowledge yourselves. Then number two, you talked about now we have, of course, the private sector players. We have, of course, like if you look at these associations that we have in terms of the business related, right? They can be able, of course, to come in to train. Those, of course, are the private players, the NGOs and all that. And then, of course, now we have the government, which, of course, then comes in terms of training them, the skills, the capacity. We can have those seminars and all that. And then, of course, they're able to have the knowledge on what is required. So it's about also the SMEs. We see government normally tries. We normally have those trade shows and all that. But the turn-up also is also normally very low. So it's about, it's actually a collaborative approach aspect that we need to actually deploy, or rather employ, to ensure that we succeed. So, and this space is as I've said, it's a very tough one, especially you mentioned about the EU. The EU, actually, the European market actually is the toughest. You look at the issue of the sweet potatoes and all that, the regulations are very tough. So it's just about the government and all the other players sitting down and training them. And we left out another issue, which is the financing. the capital still, you still need some good capital for you to be able to access the market, because you need capital when it comes to freight. That's number one. Then you also need those licenses, you know, the export licenses and all that. But then that one, it means we can have a scenario whereby we have more people, companies coming in just as exporters, right? To be able to facilitate that so that we can have an aggregation, right? These SMEs, the businesses are able to produce what they can. If it is avocados and all that, they're able to produce. If it is even the clothing and all that, the shoes and all that, then they can be able actually to actually produce what they can. Then there is this aggregation. Then after that, of course, we have those off-takers that then come in and buy. And of course, you know, if we have companies who have the capital, they can be able to access the required knowledge for that. Then they come in, they train the farmers, for example, they train the manufacturers who are, of course, in a small size, and then, of course, they off-take and actually sell, yeah.
Very good. I mean, if you're just joining us, we're talking to Dennis Liala. He's a business analyst as well as the chair of Western Elite Business. We are looking at the future of SMEs in this country, the challenges they are facing, and how they need to surmount these challenges, and how do we deal with some of those insurmountable challenges. Well, that's the conversation that we're having here. Are you an SME? I mean, our lines are open. @O'Brien Kimani is my X handle. You have an X handle? What do you call the Twitter handle?
Yeah, of course, it's Atware Association, and then of course mine is just the Lialo Militia. Yeah, Dennis. Yeah.
Very good. You can get through to us so that we can have a very good conversation, and also if you have a question that you feel needs to be addressed, you can just talk to us. And talking about SMEs, it's all about job creation, and the government is opening up a 2-day job fair in Kisumu. And right now, the Principal Secretary for Labor Skills, Shadrach Mwandime, is opening that fair at the National Industrial Training Authority in Kisumu. So let's go there and first of all have a listen, and then we'll be back with more stories.
Makofi tena tafadhali. Thank you. I hope you have benefited from the wisdom of the International Labour Organization representative. If we have a representative of the Governor Kisumu County, kindly let me know. I also wish to ask the representative of the Kotu to let us know when you arrive. Now I would like to invite the representative of the Executive Director and Chief Executive Officer of Federation of Kenya Employers, that is FKE. Kindly. Please give him a clap as he comes to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Thomas Achok. I'm here representing Madam Jacqueline Mugo, the Executive Director of Employers. Madam Jacqueline is also wearing the hat of, she's the President of International Labour Organization. See, that is a global achievement. Can you clap for her in absentia? Yeah, I was given a speech here by Madam Jacqueline to read, but given that the chair had raised the red flag, that can create boredom, I'll just give highlights. Our chief guest on Shadrach Mwadime, Principal Secretary, Ministry of Labor, the representative of His Excellency the Governor, Kotu representative, NITA Chair and NITA Director General, ILO representative, Regional Commissioner Nyansa, Madam Florence, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Yeah, as FK, we are deeply honored to be in this important discourse, because the issue of unemployment is a labor issue. We are so concerned about it, and it's actually a social evil that is really very, very frustrating. We've seen some of our young people who have even graduated, acquired very good paper certificates, but languishing in poverty. So this topic that the organizers settled on, that is unlocking employment opportunities, is very, very crucial to us as a federation, because we need to produce graduates with appropriate skills, the right skills in the labor market, those who can fit well in our labor landscape. As FK, you know, we stand for fair labor practice, and that is why we know that you know, we use as our tool is what is called social dialogue.
That is the job fair being held in Kisumu at the National Industrial Training Authority Center in the city of Kisumu. Various stakeholders from the private as well as the public sector, you know, gathering there to discuss the future of jobs. And right here we are discussing the future of SMEs. We're in the company of Dennis Liala, a business consultant as well as an expert in matters business and SMEs. I want to ask you this question. How then do we create a future-ready SMEs, bearing in mind that the world is spinning at a very fast rate?
Sure. Thank you. I think there have been discussed there about the employment. You realize how employment is a very important aspect in any country. And that is, of course, the said about them employing, providing, of course, over 15 million jobs, of course, to these Kenyans. And, of course, now, the question I've asked is a good one. It's about how can we make these SMEs ready, make them be ready for the future, to thrive, and of course to be sustainable, to see the aspect of sustainability of your businesses. And so number one is what we just came from, the aspect of training. The capacity building is still very critical for them, right? How can they be able to handle the basic things, financial management when it comes to business? I mean, how can they then be able to understand the legal framework in the country to operate? We talked about the issue of them to access credit. They need to be formalized. And so there is no way the government is going to actually assist them much if they are not formalized. We saw the government really trying a lot to able to register these businesses. I think that was the start of the term. So the training is very important. Them having the right skills, right? We have most of SMEs, yes, they have skills, but most of them are outdated, you know. What you gained from your maybe your grandfather and all that, you're still using that. So how can we be able to train them? And then how can we be able actually to enable them now deploy technology. Actually, they have to, because nowadays, for the future, you talked about the future, and technology is the future. We have the issue of the AI and all that. But of course, they have actually to understand the basic things, like how can they use technology. Talked about the e-commerce, that is part of the technology. How can they automate their business? That's right. We have some simple things, like when it comes to accounting, you can use that for that. And then, of course, we have the issue of having that initiative to ensure that they access capital. Other countries really put a lot of emphasis on actually how can our businesses survive. And you have seen even in America, most of the time, the government comes in to even fund farmers, right? To fund businesses so that they can be able then to thrive, because capital is a very important aspect. So we have to ensure that how can we be able to put our hands together as the private sector, as the government, to look at the issue of capital. And of course, it's about also the SMEs themselves being able to be taught how good to use the capital, or if it's credit and all that. We have seen scenarios whereby an SME borrows money, and instead of using the money for the intended purpose, they go into other issues, consumption-based applications. So how can they be that this is the best way? You should use the credit given well, so that you produce, you multiply what you have, you repay the debt, right, and grow your business. So the debt itself, and even some have a negative attitude towards that. So capital is another ingredient, as I've said, when it comes to preparing them for the future. The technology, very crucial for the future actually, and then even trying to look at the environmental, actually the operating framework. How can we make this framework, the operating framework in this country, to favor the SMEs? Of course, we have so many interventions that the government has been coming up with, but of course it's about how can they deepen that, right, upscale. How can they be able, of course, to be actually ensure that whatever they're trying to do is actually having access to the intended persons or businesses, right? If we're talking about, like there is a program, like what we're talking about, the guarantee, the SME, the guarantee program, credit guarantee program, how can we be able to ensure that it accesses this, actually it gets to these SMEs? So we have to really, there's a lot of work to be done in terms of preparing these SMEs. And I think we need to really look at how other countries grew, right? We have, for example, China, which is a good example. From 1980s, they have really grown. You saw, we were saying that China was able to alleviate around 2 billion people, 1 billion from poverty. Yeah, in less than, it should be in less than 50 years or what. So they have really done a lot.
Actually, in less than 30 years, they've managed to uplift more than 700 million people from abject poverty.
Yes.
And this is what is referred to as the Chinese economic miracle.
Miracle.
Liala, we have to come to the end of this conversation.
Yes. Great.
Always a pleasure to have you, and of course, sharing your insight with us. It's always a great concept. We look forward to talking to you, but before I let you go, what is your advice to the SMEs watching this program and to the young people watching this show and asking themselves, where do I start?
Thank you very much. For those watching, of course, the SMEs and the young people, of course, the young people, of course, I will tell them that number one is that we see most of them graduating, and we say that the only way, the best way ever, is that for you to understand is that you are being trained to create jobs, opportunity. That means entering into a business, right? So that they should not be focused on employment, right? Being employed in the formal space. So that's the first thing. And when you say about getting into business, of course, you start as an SMEs. So I will say that the young people should have a good attitude, the right attitude towards starting small businesses, right? I mean, we have those, of course, you asked about the entire SMEs. It's about them just then being, of course, I know we are in a very tough situation currently, the demonstrations and all that. It's just, of course, them trying to look at how will they, of course, recover from that. Like, for example, those that have had their property, of course, businesses destroyed. We are hoping that the government will come up with measures actually to assist them, of course, get back to their feet. Word for them is that let them, of course, just keep on being resilient and trying their best at whatever opportunity that comes, whether it is credit-based, whether it's training, they should always be ready to take that up. They should be able to attend the trade fairs and all that. Yeah.
Very good. Sure. In short, it's a question of learn, and learn.
Exactly.
And of course, learn to listen.
Exactly.
Very good. Thank you very much, Liala, for your time.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
I mean, listen. I want you to listen. It's always said that business is hard and hard enough. But it's just a question of learning and understanding the art of business, the art of seizing opportunities so that you can match and get big in business. I have always told you this. When you go into the world of business, you're going to go through what we call the VUCA, V-U-C-A environment. Volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous environment. Because the nature of business is that you are not in a position to predict what is going to happen tomorrow, but you're expected to be ready for tomorrow. So go in, make it big, and let us all build Kenya. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you very much indeed for your time. You have been watching this check live from our national headquarters here at Broadcasting House. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your afternoon, because who is coming up next? Eat Kurunzi Mashinani. Thank you for your time. Bye for now.